you're actually capable of admiring success, and you're capable of trying to replicate it for yourselves and your children, and you actually celebrate that.
Well, we think it's possible, but there's not a caste system
That's a
here.
faith.
Yes.
It's a faith. You
Yes.
believe that that's, not only do you believe that that's possible, you believe that it's appropriate.
Yes.
And that's the American dream.
And it's celebrated.
And celebrated. And that's no different than worshipped fundamentally. Like that, the difference between those words is like semantic.
And so that
trivial.
That is what is attractive.
Yeah, well, partly too because you remember, like one of the countries I went to visit was Albania, and Albania was the worst of the Soviet countries, and that's a hard contest to win. Like there are caverns all over Albania that the government dug out because the whole story there was Albania was the richest, most desirable country in the world, and they were absolutely surrounded by enemies. It was like the ultimate paranoid totalitarian states, you know, and they're not very happy about the devastation that wreaked for 60 years. And, you know, they look to the West, to the best part of the West, and think, God, don't lose that, guys. Like we had the totalitarian utopia, and it wasn't, I wouldn't recommend it. So I'm going through all these countries, and people are telling me this concern they have. And then they also say, well, we feel like we're voices crying in the wilderness, like we're concerned about the direction of the culture war, let's say. But if we say anything about it, we get taken out by the mob. But then I went to like 14 countries and everyone said the same thing. And I thought, well, if the same thing is happening in 14 countries, you're not a voice crying in the wilderness. You're just people who aren't communicating very well with each other. So I thought, well, why isn't there an international organization that's really centrist, you know, that would attract traditionalist, small c conservatives and classic liberals alike? You know, we don't want the ultranationalist types because they go off the deep end in one particular way, and you know the radical leftist globalist utopians who are under the grip of the Marxist idea. That's a very small minority of people. There's a huge number of people in the reasonable middle, but they don't seem to. They've abdicated their responsibility. That's a good way of thinking about it. So then I started talking when I went through Europe. I said, well, you know, I'm thinking about organizing a convention where I could bring people together to talk about a different vision and also maybe to share specific policy ideas that worked, right? So that's more concrete. And everyone I talked to said, I'd really be interested in that. I'll change my schedule. I'll do everything I can to help. And that just happened in every country. And so I thought, well, that's weird because, you know, this is a preposterous idea. And what should happen is that people, you know, maybe they're pleased to meet me and they give some lip service to the idea and it just ends there. That's the destiny of most ideas. But that isn't what happened. Then I went to the UK and started talking about it, and exactly the same thing happened. People were just like, sign me up, man, what can I do? Then I went to Washington. I talked to the Republican Study Committee about this, and they make policy for the Republicans, and the same thing happened. A whole bunch of Republicans came up and said, we'll change our schedule, make sure you have the conference at some time when the House isn't sitting so we can attend. Is there anything I can do to help? And I realized then, you know, the conservative types, they're pretty good at implementing. They're pretty good incremental movers because they're conscientious, but they're not very good at vision. And so they get reactionary, you know, and what happens on the Republican side is they're always pointing to the left saying, you go too far, but there's no vision. So it's hard for them to attract young people. But it turns out if you put forward something that approximates an invitational vision, they're just all over that, like in no time flat. So then how to implement it? Well, we got together a group of people in London twice, very diverse group of people, and we hashed out these 5 questions that I presented to you, and everyone basically agreed, despite a wide range of political opinions in the room. Said, yeah, those seem to be the key questions. And then we figured out that we needed to put this forward as an invitation and not as a top-down, you know, compulsion-based, you have to do this or the planet's going to be doomed. It has to be an invitation. And now we're trying to work out the details. And well, the first real move will be to open this up to public participation, to figure out how to do that, to get a dialogue going, but then also to have this conference October 31st, November 1st, and November 2nd in London. And I plan to do 3 lectures at night there, one on the crisis of the West, one on environmental stewardship, and one on metaphysics, a public lecture to kind of anchor the convention. We've got, I think, the Apollo in London already set up for that. And, and our goal, God willing, is that we develop a vision that everyone says, yeah, I'm in, what can I do? Instead of the vision being, you're emitting too much carbon dioxide there, buddy, and enough cars and comedians for you. Yeah. So we'll see. But the thing that's been striking is how rapidly this came together and how motivated people were to participate. We had people from Australia, for example, who have lots to do, the people who came. They flew all the way from Australia for a 2-day meeting 3 weeks ago to discuss this. They were only there for 2 days. People came from Washington and from all over Europe, and it's weird. But I think the reason is, and you know this, is that, what do they say? The people perish for lack of vision. It's absolutely, man. And this vision we're being offered is this dire, bloody apocalypse. And, we have to limit our consumption. We have to make energy expensive. Everyone can't have enough. We have to accept limits. There's too many people on the planet. We have to run around like frightened tyrants to clamp everything down. It's like all that's doing, it's demoralizing young men like mad. Young people aren't even having relationships anymore because especially the men, if they're not bloody patriarchal tyrants, they're virgin raping planetary despoilers. It's like, what kind of vision is that for young men? It just makes them sick, and I've seen, believe me, I've seen plenty of that. People are so grateful if you provide them with an alternative that says, that ambitious striving that you have within you, that's something that's making itself manifest in the optimal way as something that's the highest, not just a manifestation of your tyrannical, patriarchal, rapacious nature. That's what we tell young men, like nonstop from the time they're 3 onward. And then what? Then they're all timid shells of themselves, embarrassed about everything they want and do. They don't even have enough spine to approach a woman and try to establish a relationship. They're in love with Tinkerbell, the porn fairy, instead. It's horrible. And so we're hoping to put forward a vision that's an invitation, to the table. And with the idea that if we got our act together, especially given our technological power, God only knows what sort of world we could build.